Yeah.
So everyone, back by popular demand, we've got James last year, and we'd love to welcome you to our office and thank you for coming and spending time with us.
No problem.
He is going to teach you guys, help you guide your clients through the closing process today.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me back. For those of you that were here last time, it's a very relaxed kind of a presentation. We jump in with questions. We'll go through lots of points here and there, and what I'm going to do today is just explain. It's sort of a hodgepodge a bit. What I want to talk about first is, before you actually have an offer signed and in that process, I'm just going to remind or do some refresher tips, both for purchase and sale, that you probably know, but just in case, it's a good idea to go through to make sure that everything's covered off. Now, the second part of what I'm going to deal with is, after the deals are firm, what do we have to worry about? Deadlines, next steps, choosing the professional team, relationships, expectations, and going from there. So that's sort of an overview. It won't, I don't think we'll go as long as we did on the status certificate one. That one just went on for about, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I was supposed to be like, I had in my mind 15, 20 minutes and questions. It just went going and going. So what I want to do first is start about before the deal. Now, I'm going to bring up some points that I have found from my practice that it's a good refresher for many agents, and I'm going to start with a purchase, then I'll do a sale, and then we'll move on from there. Now, what I do typically in terms of talking to agents about a purchase, the big issues today, again, you should be familiar with, are the residency citizenship issue requirements to make sure you can avoid the foreign buyer tax. Early on, I had a few mishaps on files where it turned out the clients were not residents, and it was a scramble to try and get ready for closing. They had told the agent they were, but in fact they had applied and they were waiting for their residency card, and they couldn't get it done, and then it was like a rush to the finish where they had to go across the border, pick it up, and go back. So make sure you explain to any client with regards to a purchase the requirement, and ask them up front, do you have your permanent resident card or a passport, and go from there. Now, one of the tricks to keep in mind is, if you're dealing with a married couple, or I guess couples that are defined as spouses, if one of them is a Canadian citizen and the other is not, or not a resident, you're covered. Okay? As long as both of them are on title, you don't have to worry so much about the second. If both of them are coming from the United States or another country and they're in the process, you have a problem. So always try and make that a checklist question, just something to get out of the way. Are you a permanent resident, or both of you, or either of you Canadian citizens?
How do you verify that?
You want to see the card.
No, do you verify it though?
Yeah, I have to.
Oh, okay.
Well, first I do, in a nutshell, the honest approach is, I have a questionnaire, which I'll show you after. I send out to clients where they tick off yes or no. Now, if they lie, they lie. But when it comes to the closing, I have to ask for ID. So that's why I'm saying it's better to nip it in the bud.
Will they show you a driver's license?
The driver's license is not enough.
No,
It's
you
got to be a passport,
passport.
or and if they don't have a
Yeah.
passport, or they show me a U.S. passport or a European passport, then I need to see a PR
Okay,
card.
but some people don't have passports.
Then,
Well,
Permanent resident card.
yeah,
PR card or the land.
Or
birth
birth
certificate.
certificate. If they're from Canada.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
if they're from Canada,
Yeah, they should
first
have
of
it,
all,
yeah.
they have a birth certificate.
Yeah.
If they don't have a birth certificate, I don't even know, a SIN card is not enough evidence. So
Yeah.
just be careful,
Yeah.
okay?
if you don't know them.
You can also just remind clients as well, you know the purple ID cards that Ontario has?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So for those people, I mean, it's a bit late in the game when you're already doing
Yeah.
a deal, but people should know that if you don't drive, that's fine. You can still apply for an Ontario photo ID card. Purple looks like a driver's license, and that's it. That won't cure that.
What about first time buyers?
What about first time?
Like, do people lie? Right?
Yeah.
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 We're never
What do
gonna
you do?
get
Well,
through
that's on them.
No.
The US,
It's on them.
yeah,
They
they have
get
to pay.
Yeah, we can't guarantee
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
The problem is, back to the residency issue, I have to do a registration and basically do a legal confirmation that I've done my due diligence to confirm.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, I mean, look, if they provide fraudulent,
Yeah,
perfect,
yeah,
beautiful
yeah.
ID, whatever, but
Yeah.
if I just look at a driver's license and go, yep, you're okay, and it turns out I'm wrong,
Yeah.
I'm liable.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Well, when you do your FinTrack, you just ask for a passport, that's what I do.
Passport.
Yeah, but some people don't have passports.
That's what I'm saying, PR card, birth
Yeah.
certificate, along with the driver's license or something. If they don't have any of it, well, then there's something, maybe not a red flag, but enough that you have to take a step back and say, we need something, or else you don't get paid.
Yeah.
So that's the residency, simple issue there, everybody clear on that?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, this one I want to talk about, because I have seen confusion before, everybody's in a rush to the finish to get a deal done. Are you familiar with the difference between a mortgage pre-approval and an approval? Clients come all the time, I'm pre-approved, I'm good. And then what ends up happening is agents sometimes rely on it, that they're all set, put in an offer with no finance condition, and then all hell breaks loose. So just explain the risk to the clients that a mortgage pre-approval is a simple calculation, typically on a computer, that just says based on your income you could qualify for a mortgage. Doesn't mean you will. So be very careful not to rush to take off. And by the way, this goes back to, I think, the other session. I'm a firm believer, whatever you deal with in terms of any conditions, I don't care if it's a home inspection, financing, never submit an offer with it not in it and then cross, that never existed. I'm always prefer, if you're representing a buyer, that you put the clause in, have it crossed off and initial. The reason is it shows at least evidence on paper that it was there, that there would have been a discussion because it's there and initial. If it's not there, lo and behold, the clients will have selective memories and come back at you and say, we never discussed the implications of not having a home, but he never told me that was an option. I would have put it in, I would have definitely would have. And then you're in a battle of he said, she said this, whatever. So put it in, cross it off, and have them initial. If you can't do that for whatever reason, try and create a paper trail and an email to the client saying, as we discussed, there was I would recommend we do this, and that by taking it out, you're putting yourself, just put something down.
There's another form you can use too. There's another form.
No, but you can back yourself up.
Yeah, but there's another form.
Step one is the agreement. Why not? Where's the harm? I mean, the seller's gonna see it's crossed off, they're not gonna care.
Yeah.
You're covered by putting it in and having it initialed as best as possible. So it's better to do that than to not have it in there at all.
And DocuSign's come up with a new strike through, so it's tidier too.
Okay. My pet peeve, DocuSign.
No.
Well, no, it's on a professional level, not your level, because the whole world thinks now that lawyers can just do everything with DocuSign. I don't need to meet with you.
Yeah.
You're getting to them, my listener. DocuSign is magic, it does everything. No, it doesn't. And then they get mad at me because I have to meet them.
Yeah.
God forbid verify it. So, back to,
Stress to meet someone.
so, any questions on that? We talked about mortgage and crossing off clauses. Okay, first time buyer, you raised the question earlier. Is everybody familiar with what the conditions are?
In
Somebody want to tell me?
Toronto, you get a discount for the first $400,000 on the purchase.
I
What are
think
the
you're asking us what.
What do you
who
understand the
qualifies.
qualifications are?
Never owned the
They
property.
used to be
eligible
anywhere
for
in the
the
world.
maximum household annual income of less than 100.
Well, that's
No.
cheating.
No, I just got the email.
Yeah, but
Jason
that's
just
not,
said it.
that's not.
Okay.
That's
Never
not-
The bottom line is, yeah, you're right. The first point is that you cannot have owned any interest in any property anywhere in the world. Okay? That goes for full year-round cottages. There is some discussion, if it's not a year-round but a seasonal property, then it may not be tainting it, you could still claim it. So if you have a cottage that's only for summer and not winterized, you might still be able to get away with it. Now,
So if a family puts the cottage in their name and the kid's name,
if it's a year-round cottage, they're screwed.
They get too much money even, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
You realize,
They get
of
rid of
course,
that.
I realized, by the way, that I didn't know you would do this, but when you're filming it, I was like, hey, we're on YouTube. So
Oh.
everything you say is
Oh,
on the
right,
video
okay.
there.
Oh.
So just be careful what you say about it, because I'm looking it up and I'm going, how did I get on YouTube? Anyways, I have 3 views, 2 of which are me. So let's try and,
No,
after
I
this is
think
all.
it's not count. It is,
No, I go on different computers.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
What if it's a married couple?
Okay, I was gonna get to
Okay,
that.
sorry, go ahead.
So, actually, do you know the answer?
Well, no, that's what I was gonna ask you.
Okay,
So
no,
you-
that's fine.
yeah.
There are exemptions. It's a bit tricky, but when you have a married couple, one spouse previously owned a property, but so long as while they are married, neither of them owned any property, they requalify as first-time buyers.
Oh, interesting.
So it is a bit of a tricky one, you have to ask that. But if a spouse did own an interest in property while, and even one day while they were married, then both are tainted.
Right. that's
What
what I
what
thought.
if they're not married?
Then the one person who is the non-owning, ever-owning partner can claim a half credit. Or you can manipulate the percentages if you go on as a 99.
Right.
That's a separate
Right,
issue. But
right.
if there's legal spouses, so let's talk about what is a spouse. Spouse, married, or common law, meaning you've lived together for 3 years or more. Also having a child together after a year constitutes a spouse too. Okay, so there are different definitions. You definitely, I think it's prudent anyways, because clients are going to look to you and say, I need to do my budget and calculations, so you're trying to maybe help them a little bit. Again, you can defer them to a lawyer, but if you ask the questions, does anybody own property? Oh, I've owned. Were you married or not? And go through that step, you'll get to the bottom of it. Now, if any of you at any time are going through one of these situations with customers and you're not 100% sure, just email me or call me and I can verify it for you. But that's just a quick overview. Okay? So that has to do with the first-time buyer type qualifications. When it comes to purchases as well, I always like to throw in conditions. You know, when things go wrong, and I'm not saying on a major scale, I'm talking about garbage left behind, or, you know, oh my God, the floor scratched, it wasn't like that, and I'm even going through one where the driveway has been gouged by accident on the way out. My hands are tied. If by law in the agreement, the seller is responsible to maintain the property in the same condition when the offer was made. Great. But if we get into one of these disputes about, oh, it was like that when you put the offer in, and we're getting into these, photo battles, no, this is what it was like before, and I'm using Google or whatever, you can get into these kind of situations. It's always better if you can, and again, it depends on the market and the opportunity, to put a clause in, maybe something innocuous like a holdback of $200 towards any garbage removal if you can, or if you identify when you're going in that there may be a risk, there's tenants moving out, and you know there's a probability, or it could be fairly high for some damage, to throw in a clause that, a holdback. Because if you have it in the agreement, there's nothing to negotiate. It's there, the lawyer has to follow it, we're good. Otherwise, then we're all working together after closing, sending letters, making phone calls, going crazy, trying to resolve a problem that's not going to resolve. It all depends on the psychological profile of the seller you're dealing with. So just think about it. Again, in the markets where you've got 20 offers and you want to go in clean, I get it. Those are the risks. But again, walk your client through it, saying, in a perfect world, I would always recommend putting these kind of conditions in that would protect you if there's a problem. The reason you say that is that if it does come up, you say, look, we discussed it. These are the risks we took to go in clean or with a very light offer. We'll have to do our best to work through, but that's all we can do. So it's not coming back at you, why didn't you tell me about this, or why couldn't this have gone in the agreement? Okay. That's on a purchase. I'm not going to start the second part yet. I want to talk briefly about a sale. So we've talked about a purchase pre-considerations. Let's talk about various issues. I'll go in my order here. Large deposits, are they good or bad? What are your thoughts on that?
Depends on
I
which
think
side
they're
you're on.
good.
Well, okay, so we're acting on a sale. Large deposits,
Right.
good.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Depends
On what?
Well,
where my client is from,
Why?
Why?
because I know of laundering.
Oh, well, that's
That's sense.
I can't, yeah,
That's
money
really
laundering is a whole
criminal.
different. The reason I'm raising the question today, we're not about money laundering. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, okay, I was gonna say, sometimes it's a disadvantage to the seller, because they're buying a house the same day, and the deposit's held at part of their money they need to close is held at the real estate office.
I'm just gonna sit down, you got it, and then you come out.
What were you gonna say?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
all right,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, okay.
It's-
I feel like
we
Johnny
forget about
Carson,
that.
I don't know if you're old enough for Johnny Carson with this
We
one.
forget about that as
But you
a
can
buyer's
repeat, I don't
agent.
mind.
As a buyer's agent.
So picture the scenario where you are relying on sale proceeds to close. So you have a sale and a purchase same day. I need the money to close. Now, you have a deposit that's so large that it results in a surplus owing back to the seller. So it covers the commission and the HST, and there could be 10, 20, 15,000, whatever number it is, extra. So the problem is now I'm going to the client saying, I'm short. I need money because you got your land transfer tax, everything, and they budgeted the sale price and everything in. So now we're scrambling to get the broker to sign off or pre-sign the check so that it can all be worked out. So sometimes it's great from an intentional point of view. If you're not doing a same-day sale, then by all means, squeeze as big a deposit as you can. But if you know the clients are gonna do a buy and a sell the same day, my personal suggestion, keep it at 5%. Keep the commission equal to the deposit range, and it'll balance itself out. I'd rather know that, oops, we have to pay a small amount extra to top up the HST and balance, than having money that's owed back and they're all,
Running around for money.
scrambling for money.
I'm seeing listings that say minimum 5% deposit.
Well, that,
Well, that's
All the
that's
time.
Well, that's all the
different.
time.
That's different,
Yeah.
but
Just so you know where that
this is
came
just for-
from,
yeah.
the whole
This is
concept
just
of
for
the
commissions.
putting that down
Yeah.
is that your deposit, sorry, your commissions are at risk.
Okay,
I don't know
that's
if you're
That's
aware
why.
of that.
Because other,
Yeah.
we're the last.
You may be
So,
owed,
David, a 5% deposit?
yeah, no.
I'm
Yeah,
seeing
normally
like brokerage
5%.
remarks,
Okay,
and
one
it says
person has
minimum
to talk.
5%, yeah.
okay, well, what I was just gonna get at is, the reason you try to get the deposit equal to your 5% down is because you're at risk. If there was a scenario where a seller has outstanding debts and all of a sudden a judgment pops up or a mortgage that wasn't, or some other lien, the responsibility of the lawyer, we have an irrevocable direction as part of the listing process to pay the commission from the balance. If the balance doesn't cover it, you're on your own. You have a contract, you can sue, but if there's no money, you don't get it. But if the deposit is paid in trust, then you can't touch it. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen often, but it can happen where all of a sudden a client's representing to you, yeah, I'm solvent, everything's good, and you just do the small deposit, and all of a sudden it turns out that they weren't forthright. There's a Revenue Canada lien being registered or was registered, and another claim from a business partner. Before you know it, we work out a deal, or the numbers work out enough on the sale that we can satisfy all the liens, give clear title to the buyer, and we end up with either nothing or just a small amount of commission left. We remit the commission that we can. We're off the hook as lawyers because we follow instructions, but you're short. If you get the 5% plus HST covered or close to it, it's trust money protected. We have to work with it as if it's a debt. You
So
understand? That's
the
sort of that
Revenue
whole.
Canada
That's
doesn't
where
get
they
that
are.
money, but we do?
No, it'll have to be negotiated then, that's right, or the deal doesn't close, right? Because we're gonna say, well, no, that's trust money, the commission has to be paid, that means the pool of money is less. How do you wanna handle
Who's
it?
gonna be
And then
short?
they all have to negotiate
Right.
amongst themselves
Right.
how to work it. But if you're not, if it's not a large deposit, then the extra money is part of their pool, not yours. You can still get paid, you just have to sue. But that's the difference. So most people will try and historically aim for the 5%, but sometimes people, I'm serious, here's my 100,000 deposit. Great, everybody's thrilled except me, because I gotta figure out how to piece the deal together.
Right.
So the recommendation is 5% in trust or bigger.
Or bigger,
Or
but
big-
not
yeah.
if.
Enough to cover
but
the
I mean,
commission.
Enough to cover your commission to protect yourself, but not bigger so much if you know the client's buying and selling the same day, because that's counterproductive.
Okay.
Doesn't help. Okay?
Which isn't like super common.
Oh, it's super common.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get to some of these points because it drives me nuts as a lawyer, so I'm gonna try and talk to you as agents to avoid these scenarios where possible, because people's expectations are way up here when you buy and sell same day and it just doesn't happen the way they think. More often than not, they end up crying. It happens, but people's expectations are completely different, the stress of moving, all of that, but we'll go for that in a moment. Bridge loans. I'm a big fan of bridge loans. People think bridge loans are super expensive. They are not as bad as it seems, because the way I look at it, there is a cost for a bridge loan, depending on what you want to do. So you're buying and selling a property. If you're buying a property that's turnkey, I don't need to do anything, it's perfect as is, great. Stagger it 1 business day. That's what I just told my client. You want to close on a Friday? Close on a Friday, we'll do your sale on the Monday. Now, if you need to do work, then it's even better. Stagger it a week or two early or budget your time accordingly. There may be cost, but it allows you access to do whatever you need without furniture or not being there. The reason I think a bridge loan is important even on a 1-day thing is it's not cost-free to close same day. When you're looking at an apples-to-apples scenario, what happens on a closing day where you're selling and then you're buying? Well, your movers come in the morning, and then they're waiting. How much are you paying your movers hourly to sit there and wait while we wait for the money to work itself through to close the purchase? So there's a cost. I don't know what their hourly rate is, I haven't checked, but there's an inherent cost. And aside from the stress value, time, and everything else. If you do the bridge, there's a couple of advantages. One, you close your purchase independently, no stress. You get the keys, you move when you want. Number 2, In the remote situation, let's assume, and it does happen, there's a problem with the sale. There's a mortgage issue, a last minute problem, oh, the client's out of town, they want to, whatever it may be, all of a sudden you have a problem with the sale. If you're closing same day, you're stuck in a loop, and it happened on one file, and I told them, nothing I can do, we can fight about it, but they couldn't get the money on the closing day, which meant they couldn't close the purchase, and it was a Friday, so they had to, the movers came, it was a big disaster. But if you do a bridge, and you close on your own, independent of the sale, what do you think will happen if we hit the sale and the buyer of the property comes and says, we have a problem, we need an extension? No problem, we'll extend, you cover the daily costs. As long as we're not out of pocket, I don't care, take a week. You cover the utilities, you cover the property taxes, the insurance, the daily interest on our mortgage, the bridge cost, that's fine. But you can't do that when you're buying and selling the same day.
No.
Because you're stuck, you're hostage, right? And then it just becomes what we call a chain. The people that are buying from you have to sell to somebody else, and on it goes. Why stress yourself out? If you can do it, and you have people doing a double, have them stagger it one day if they have to. Yeah.
One thing that I learned in this past week is that you can actually only bridge if you have a mortgage at the other end.
Yeah, you're right. There are
And I
limitations.
didn't know that.
Yeah, you can't just, if you have no mortgage, you can't bridge. The only other way to do it is if you're pre-planning, is in theory, is I own my house, there's no mortgage, then just see if there's enough time at 60-day closing, plus see if they can apply for a line of credit on their
Yeah.
house and self-bridge.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do, yeah.
Self-bridge, that way it will work. But yeah, I mean, there are some challenges, and of course with the lending requirements, they could be a bit wonky. I'm not saying it's perfect,
Yeah.
but I would strive to do that first, rather than encourage people to just buy and sell same day. That's just my
Are there
feeling.
money lenders that in our situation that you could go to?
Probably private
must be.
lenders, but here's the concern with private lenders, is then they charge fees.
Yeah.
So I asked
Yeah.
I asked Kaylee from
Yeah.
Friesen Morgan
Yeah,
about it, that's
yeah.
who I had this conversation with.
Yeah.
And she said, no lender will bridge, and then she came back and she said, what we usually do in those circumstances is we use a line of credit against the existing
Yeah.
sale to close
Things
on
can
the
be
purchase
done,
and-
it can be done if there's time. So these are things sometimes you make a note for yourself to ask, what are your plans? Meaning, when you're setting up the deals for the clients, do it in the beginning, so that you know, for example, oh, we're gonna do, they're in a hurry, they wanna do a rush closing, buy and sell, and they need to stagger it, and they wanna do it in 3 weeks. That may not be enough time to get a line of credit secured on their home, so you may wanna just sort of get an overview of, well, what are your thoughts, what's the whole big picture? And then try and work with that, okay? So yeah, pros and cons, I'm not saying everything is perfect for everybody, but that works better in the long run if they can get a bridge loan or self-bridge, okay? One of the things you also want to do on a sale, again, a lot of my clients, it's not your responsibility, but it's helpful for sellers to understand that they're going to be paying off their mortgages as part of the closing unless they're porting it. So typically, clients have two choices. They pay it off and get a new mortgage, or they pay it off and port it to the next property. If they port it, no penalty, great. But if they don't, because they were told by a broker, oh, this is great, I can just get a better rate, they don't realize sometimes that there's a penalty. And the penalties can be significant. There are two types of penalties. Are you familiar with the mortgage penalties?
The crazy kinds.
Well, there's two. If you have a variable mortgage, the maximum penalty is a 3-month interest penalty regardless. Okay, that's the cheaper of them. The other one is the gouging interest differential penalty, and that one varies bank to bank how they calculate it. Some of them will compare the interest rates based on the posted versus the real rates and try and come up with a percentage and multiple. Bottom line is, I've seen clients go spend $12,000 to $25,000 in penalties depending on the terms and the mortgage that they have. So the issue might be, before they sell, is have them call their lender and ask for, if they're not going to be porting, or even if it's just a straight sale, ask them to get a quote, a rough idea of what they would be paying so they can budget accordingly. You may find that if somebody tells them it's that large, they may want to adjust their sale price to try and recover it. They say, I know what the market, but I need to make sure I recover this back in my sale. I want to make sure we get this much. But you got to encourage them to get that information first. I can't calculate it.
Or you can sell a mortgage with the house.
Yes and no.
Zoomable.
Do you know what the problem with that is?
Well, yeah, but I've done it before, and they blended and extended. and
That's
stuff.
not what I mean.
Oh.
If we get to that stage in the economy where the interest rates go up enough that people who have these low mortgages can market, that's great. And yes, it's all fun, wonderful with the blend and extend, that part's fine. But did you know that
You're still on the hook.
you're still on the hook?
Yeah, but-
So you sell your home.
Yeah, but it's still
No, it's not safe. There's defaults. If you sell your home and they take over your mortgage, you have nothing. You don't own any interest in the property,
But
but you
you
can
have-
still get a
Oh my
demand for
God.
payment from the lender if these unknown buyers that you don't know default.
Can you assume back the house? Is the
No,
mortgage?
No.
no,
it's
you
not
have no
your
interest.
Yeah, what about the vendor take back?
No,
That's
that's
just
not
when
the
saving
same.
money, it's different.
Yeah, vendor take back.
That's
The
it.
vendor take back means you never see your money.
Never see your money.
You gotta wait for
That's
it.
right.
So just be aware, you can get around that
Yeah.
by making a conditional upon the seller receiving a release. You have to go back to the mortgage lender,
Yeah.
the bank or whatever, and say, if the buyer qualifies, will we get a release? If they say yes, then you can go ahead with the assumption, you're off the hook, good for it, you know? But if not, then I wouldn't recommend it. That's the risk, but yes and no.
Yeah, but
Thankfully, they don't
What,
have
you would? Would you sell your home, let a
If
let
it's
a
only
stranger, let a
20
complete
if
stranger take it over?
And if the mortgage is only 20% of the value, you know, they go possibly, you know,
How do you know? Well,
like, no, because I've done it before, where the value was like, it was like 20%. Mortgage 20% of the value. So it's gonna be safe, it's not gonna default.
You never know.
Well, do you want the aggravation, or do you want your clients to
I had-
know that
we had-
when it happens,
we had to have it
they've
closed.
gone like this and move on, instead of
We had-
getting the stress of dealing with a demand letter and having to be called in if there's a problem? Anyway,
Yeah.
so,
It's less than ideal.
okay, now I'm gonna get into the complicated, absolutely ridiculous world of family law. So we're gonna deal with separation issues. I hate them. They're a bread and butter source of business, but you get caught up, we're all sort of caught in the middle between warring factions of parties, and it's driven by family lawyers who don't understand how real estate is done. They have their own little world and bubble, how they see things. And I'm gonna give you an example of a call I got yesterday that I had absolutely no interest in touching. And as an agent, you'd be cringing. So, client calls me and says, he's separated with his wife, they have family lawyers, and he has made several attempts to buy out her interest in the home. She's rebuffed it. They've had appraisals done, and she's refusing to listen to him. She wants it put on the market. And his position basically is, I'm prepared to buy it, but I'm also a seller. So he put it to the agent who's listing the home that he wants to see the offers as they come in, and then he wants to put in his
Happens all
own
the time.
offer.
$5 more. Oh, I've seen this
Well, first
before.
right of refusal, basically.
Well, they said, yeah, but the family lawyer for the wife said, we will not agree to a first right of refusal. So I said, the problem you have is that this should have been a mechanism that was determined in advance by the court. This is how it's going to be, follow the rules. Instead, it's ridiculous, and then he's asking me my opinion. I'm not going to give you my opinion, A, because I haven't researched it, B, you're not paying me for it, and I don't want to get into this because this could just drag me in. The bottom line is there's a conflict of interest. On the one hand, you have a seller who has a legal right to see the offers coming in, but wants to use it as a tactic to buy the property by offering more money. So this puts the agent in jeopardy, because then there's going to be a complaint to RICO about the conduct. This agent manipulated us simply to get offers to help her client get the place, and on and on and on it goes. And that's just an example of what can go wrong. And I said, go back to your family lawyers, or just, go like this, don't sign anything. If you're not happy with it, don't sign, go back to court and then get it sorted. But, there's more to it in play on that file, because it's not about money, I got the sense, it's more about hurt feelings, ego, the whole family law
I've seen
thing.
it with siblings too.
Oh, yeah.
Like if one wants to buy out the other ones and they can't agree on what a good price would be, they try to get an agent to put it on the market, and then.
Exactly.
you know.
So that was a sort of an out there example, but on a more practical side, don't be lulled into a sense of security by clients saying, I'm separating with my spouse, everything's good, we're about to sign the separation agreement, everything will be fine. Because what happened on one file was my client was told by her ex, yeah, go ahead and we're good, go ahead and put in the offer on the property you want, and we'll deal with like everything's done. So she puts an offer in, and then when it comes to the closer to closing, I said, where's the signed separation? The husband refused to sign it unless he gets this, and this. So he tricked her into creating legal liability for herself, and then you're stuck with a situation where she had to capitulate on issues that she wouldn't normally because he didn't sign. So my suggestion, if you are seeing something like this go on, say, do not, it's one thing to put up, you don't want to waste your time putting a property up for sale if there's no signed separation agreement, because until it's agreed, you wasted your time. But if you have a client who wants to put in, these people get obsessed. I've never understood. You separate, and right away you have to buy another property. Like, they can't wait. They don't want to rent. They want to buy another property. And my advice to them is, when the separation agreement is signed, sealed, and delivered, and it's done, then go ahead and put an offer in, because then you're good to go. Otherwise, my personal preference would be sell the house, wait for that to close, then go buy. Because then you know the money's in hand, as opposed to some snafu that could happen last minute, and then you're legally on the hook. So family law, it's a challenging area.
So I guess you want to see the actual,
Certificate?
yeah.
Or separation agreement.
Does the same apply for
Because they
estate
could say,
sales?
yeah.
Well, that's kind of a
Siblings?
confidential document.
It is confidential, but I think, you know what,
Yeah, but
if you
you
don't
should-
see it,
yeah.
how do you
Well,
know?
that's
Yeah.
just it. They could
They
say
lie to
yes
you.
and
They
then
lie to you.
lie.
Well, yeah, I would ask.
Yeah, no harm.
Or,
Well, you can see the front page to see, can see
Or-
that
Of
exists.
course.
Or-
Yeah, I
Don't
don't
need
know.
to
I
be-
would be happy, okay, if I were in your shoes, I would ask. If they say no, say, okay, I will settle for a letter from your family lawyer confirming that the separation agreement has been duly signed and that
Right,
there
you
is,
sell the
at the pros, like
Right,
something,
right,
and then
something.
verify that it's a real lawyer.
That's
Sorry, it's
true
the
too.
cynic in me here. John Smith, Barrington Solicitor, 123 Main Street says it is.
ABC.
Exactly. We used to, in law school, when we had our exams, they used to give us a written problem. The name of the firm was always Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
The Three Stooges.
Do we cheat?
Three Stooges.
That's cute.
That's it. Okay, so that's the family law. Now, I want to just talk briefly about power of attorney. Power of attorney are a pain both on a purchase and a sale. On the purchase end, I always have people, oh, I'm going to be out of town, or I'm not here, can I just sign my power of attorney? Power of attorney is flagged all the time for fraud. Number one, the banks will not typically allow mortgages to be signed by power of attorney. So it's a very rare occurrence. It can maybe be allowed if it's an elite customer that they're familiar with and that perhaps they sign the mortgage application before they leave town and the ID is confirmed. But more often than not, the answers back we always get when clients ask us, can we sign by power of attorney? Is no. You must meet in person. So, simple question when you're doing your offers. Okay, you want to close on April 15. Are you going to be in town around the closing to sign papers? No. Well, then we better pick another date that works, because they have to understand there is no DocuSign for final closings. They have to be in person. So in that regard, coaching your client on dates is important, that they need to be around. That's the bottom line. Now,
Is that for both buy and sell or mostly for sell?
the purchase power of attorney. For a sale, it's easier to do. You can do it on a sale. There are flags, but we have to follow procedure. So you need to have a power of attorney properly prepared, so they have to produce it. We need to see ID from the person who has signed it, photo ID and signature. We need, as lawyers, to verify that the power of attorney is still valid. And then it has to be submitted up the line for verification. That's basically how it goes. So it can be done. My preference would be if you have a customer who says, look, I need to sell and the closing's April 15th, but I'm only here till the end of March and there isn't enough time to sign all the closing documents. I want so-and-so to be my power of attorney. Let the lawyer know. We can prepare. I have a one-page power of attorney I use. And it's explicit just for a sale of a property. So nobody has to worry about, oh, I'm changing my property power of attorney, healthcare, none of that. This one just says, I am authorizing person X to be my attorney solely for the purposes of signing the closing documents for the sale of this property, period. If I can prepare it, and I meet with the client, sign and get their ID, golden, 100% safe. It will always
Just for
work.
interesting, how early before closing can documents actually be signed? So let's say closing is April 15th and somebody leaves town March 30th.
We can do it
Is it
typically.
possible?
Yeah, it's possible on a sale. I mean, typically, we have to usually wait for the buyer's lawyer to send, but if we know in advance and we plan, we can advise the buyer's lawyer, our client's leaving town, if you have any documents you want us to sign, can you send it early? Because they usually follow the requisition date.
Right.
They're not gonna jump the queue. But it can be, sales are
If it's
easier
planned for.
if it's planned for. But I mean, I can't do things where, oh, here's the sale agreement, today's what, Wednesday, is today Wednesday?
Yeah.
I'm leaving town Friday, and I won't be back for the closing. Then we gotta do a power of attorney because we don't have time to turn it around. So it's a matter of degree, but yes. On purchase, no. Typically, the only way you could do it on a purchase without issue is if it's an all cash deal, because then we don't care, right?
Also, it's a lender.
It's a lender-driven
driven
Yeah,
driven
yeah.
issue.
Like
Okay.
if you look at the big picture, you're a bank, you're a representative of the bank. Are you gonna trust a person that you've never met to sign with a power of attorney that they can come back and say, I never signed that, that wasn't my legal power of attorney. Money's advanced, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah,
They have nobody to blame.
right.
Well, they blame the lawyer because that's what they owe.
And a little bit nice.
Okay, one last point on the sale is non-residency. How familiar with you are non-resident sales?
Withholding tax,
Yeah,
Yeah,
any idea what the withholding tax is?
25%?
Or,
it's 20% of the purchase price, isn't it?
there's two.
It's cheap.
There's two. There is a 25% withholding tax. However, if it is a rental property, it could be 50%.
Okay.
Most people don't say that, they just say the 25, and a lot of lawyers just think it's 25.
Mhm.
Occasionally I've bumped into a few who knew. So it becomes more of a problem, because when you're dealing with a non-resident, first question you have to ask is, okay, if we sell at this price after commission, how much equity is in the home after the mortgage? Because you got to do a calculation. So if you're selling a property for $1 million, and there's, say, a $200,000 mortgage, that brings it down to $800,000, but that would work, wouldn't it? 50% would be, you would still have enough, but you can do the math. If you could run a scenario where you don't have enough equity. Happened to me once. I had a client in Australia who had leveraged the property to do other investments, and when the time came to sell, he'd already done it. I didn't have it conditional, it was done. He had to wire me money, like 6 figures, to close his own sale, and then apply for his tax certificate clearance. So
Was he Australian or Canadian?
he was Australian. Doesn't
Does
matter.
it matter?
No, because if you're a Canadian out of the country for a certain amount of time.
No, that's different, but you have to talk, you start getting into minute
Yeah.
differences about whether or not you still have a primary residence here,
That's some
intention.
taxes or.
Yeah, but
You know-
residence doesn't follow citizenship.
No,
Yeah.
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So this,
exactly
you could
right,
be a
yeah.
Canadian citizen, but if I reside in the US.
Yeah, for a certain
then
amount of time.
there's a holdback.
Yeah, yeah.
But my point is only that when you try and ascertain, say, do you have an idea roughly what your mortgage, go online, tell me,
Mhm.
and do the math with them to see that if you take up 50%, if it's a rental property, is there enough equity to hold cover? Because you don't want to set them up for failure. You don't want to get to closing and then the lawyer says, we need to hold back $500,000 and they don't have enough because they have a $600,000 mortgage on their property, and then we've got a problem. So keep that in mind, okay? So these were just sort of preliminary pre-consideration issues for your sale and purchase. What I'll do is take it to the next step, and then at the end after, I'll also just walk you through my process, what I do, and how I educate the clients as best I can, so we can temper expectations. The number one rule is no matter how much information you send your client, expect them not to read it.
Are we familiar with that?
Yeah, they don't care. All right, so now we move all these considerations aside, the deal, signed, firm, we're ready to go. Okay, now I want to ask you your own opinion, and there's no right or wrong answer. How do you view your own role in the transaction in terms of the deal's firm, they now have to transfer over the issues to the lawyer. Where do you see yourself at in the transaction? Like, what's your role? Or do you have one?
Point of contact?
Nowhere and everywhere.
Point of contact? Like, I guess what I'm getting at is, should you consider yourself the quarterback of the transaction or a conductor of the orchestra for the transaction? In other words, you're bringing the client in, you're guiding them through the offer, you're assisting them, potentially referring them to a team of professionals, whether it's a lawyer, mortgage broker, utilities, movers, handyman, you're coordinating all of these things. Now, once you hand them over to these people, is it just your view that you want to step back, let them do whatever, and just call me if there's a problem? Or do you want to be more proactive in making sure that you touch base with the client on dates? Is everything good? Have you done this? Has the lawyer reached out to you? Have you heard from your lawyer? I just want to make sure that that there's contact. There's no snafu. You know, there are times I don't understand technology. We get faxes, and sometimes they just never appear. And so people are saying, didn't you get the agreement? We sent you that on such and such day. I don't have it. I looked. It's not in my computer. I have it digital. It's not there. Client's waiting for a phone call. I didn't even know there was a client. So it can happen. So you can't necessarily just assume it's over, here's the lawyer's name. The client may or may not reach out, we don't know. So it may be helpful in the long run from a business point of view take more of a lead on the overall process. Say, I'm not here to interfere, but I am here to help and oversee to make sure everything is running smoothly. Because if something doesn't run smoothly, they're gonna come back to you and say, that lawyer you referred me to is a real dud. They didn't do this, they didn't do that, I didn't hear from them, they're not calling me back, or the mortgage broker didn't get me, whatever. It always seems to come back on you. So what I'm getting at is you may want to consider I use the old term tickler. I don't know if you know what a tickler system is. It used to be when you had a day book and you would put dates and critical things to provide a calendar of events for your customers to say, make sure you do this by this timeline. Make sure you do this, and then come to me if you have any problems. So you're there, you're providing a value service after the fact. You can deal with it by email or phone, but what you're doing is separating yourself skill-wise from the other agents that are out there. Because a lot of agents will just say it's a factory line. I'm up to here, next is the lawyer and everybody else, move along, I'm on my next deal, I don't consider. A lot of times they say, I don't hear from my agent anymore, that's it. So try and stay in the focus because it'll benefit you both on reviews, reputation, referrals, things like that, because you're going to show them that you have their best interest at heart all the way through the process, not just until the deal's firm. That's it, on that point, okay?
Can I give you a point from an agent's point of view
Yep.
for lawyers?
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with a lawyer recently, and he was so awesome. Every time I sent him something, he sent me an email back and said, received, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I never had to follow up. It was so smooth, because if you don't, you're gonna go, okay, did they get it? Did the right person get it? Da, 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 da. It's awesome.
Backup for that is
Yeah.
read receipt.
Exactly.
Have you heard of those?
Yeah, but not every, I guess, email provider sends those, right? So
Yeah.
You just have to.
It's not a, it's a,
Selecting
yeah,
yourself.
you can just click,
Oh, yeah.
it gives you the option, do you want to send with a read receipt, you turn it
Yeah.
on and that's it.
Yeah.
okay,
I'm
that's
not saying,
It's a
I'm saying,
personal touch, I guess.
It's
Right?
nice
no,
actually getting
I get
email,
that.
yeah.
I do that myself. When I get it, I always put back thank you, because they say, please acknowledge. Of course, I'm gonna say
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
say much. Like, you
Yeah.
just give a little thumbs up,
Yeah.
whatever.
Anything,
Yeah.
But you wanna, the thing is that, I know I've been doing this now for 28 years. We don't work in a vacuum. This is a team environment, we all work together. Whether it's an agent, mortgage broker, customer, lawyer, we all have to try and do our best to make sure the job gets done. What does that mean? It means we all have to communicate. If an issue arises, let's talk about it, let's try and resolve it. So if I'm looking, for example, at a status certificate or something that I need to report back to the client, if it's something unusual or I identify a problem, before I call the client, I call the agent and we discuss it and say, look, I've identified this issue. This is what I would recommend. How do you want to handle it? And how do you want to, and sometimes the agent say, let me talk to the client. We'll discuss and figure out what are your options and solutions so that we don't blow it up. There's some lawyers out there that will just say, this is my domain. You've done your job. I don't want any interference from you as an agent. I'm here to, I don't owe you anything legally. I have to owe my obligation to the client. That's my job. And I'll tell them what I see. And that's fair, but it's counterproductive because the way I look at it, it's a team environment. Unless there is some gross issue here that we have to work with, something completely wrong, missed, whatever, then we have a problem. But otherwise, we work together.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, about status certificate, I had a lawyer,
Should have
See.
been here.
so, and it's really, it irks me. So I refer this lawyer, and he's reviewing the status certificate, and I make, an e-introduction between my clients, and then they talk, and they give them the go-ahead, do the status certificate, blah, blah, blah. And then, rather than sending his opinion or the fact that it's done or whatever to all of us, he sends it to them. So they're at work, I have no idea what's going on, I follow up with him and I say, is it done? Did you read it? Did you give them an opinion? Whatever. And I'm thinking, is it not done that a lawyer gives an opinion and copies the agent in? Is there anything that,
There is an element of privacy between the lawyer and the client. It's called a privilege issue. You're not legally entitled to receive that unless the client authorizes it.
It's like home inspection.
okay, so,
What you
So
should
can the
get,
client
what
say-
you should get, yeah, the client can either say, could you please include the agent? Or I would say, do you want me to CC your agent with the report? And they'll say yes, then we do it. Or alternatively, I could send you an email in this example and say, report was sent to the clients, please discuss. So you know it's done. That you can do. But if I'm gonna sit there and say, I don't like this, the reserve fund's bad, there's lawsuits, there's this and that, that has to be discussed, but I would do it differently. I would have a verbal discussion, but it's not the report part.
But if I wanted to be included,
You ask
I
your
could,
client.
Yeah, tell your client.
I could say to the client and say, once you
Right.
give them the,
The okay, then
The okay,
absolutely.
then
But remember,
just
you're not
mention-
the client,
Yeah.
so there is a privilege issue.
no,
We can't- yeah.
but what I'm saying, in order to counter that, I can
Yeah.
ask my client and say, copy my agent in.
I just need an email.
Yeah.
If you send me an email from the client, and the client says, please CC my agent on all correspondence, that's fine. Then I'm covered. It's for protecting me, because if the client comes
Yeah.
back and says, it's between, why did you tell my agent?
Mhm.
I don't want them to.
I understand.
So, all right, so in terms of deadlines, the key thing for me, and I see people, this is where I need your help as agents. So you're referring clients to lawyers. I send out a questionnaire, I have a welcome letter, I have one for a purchase, one for a sale, and in there it basically talks about things that we do. But the thing is that bothers me the most is on a purchase, people drag their heels on mortgages, okay? Now, I know a lot of lawyers, and myself included, when I put my fee schedule in, or my letter, I should say, I make a point of it and say, any mortgages received within, I don't remember, 2 days, 3 days before closing, or whatever it is, will be subject to an additional fee. Because we have to drop everything, it becomes an expedited rush, and it's basically unfair. I mean, unless it's a fast closing. But typically, you get these deals, you're sitting here for 60 days, and then we're waiting till the day before closing to put this deal together. I never do charge it, but I like to threaten.
As you should.
Turn that off.
What's
You know,
what's that?
I'm going to deny that's Photoshop. So. But the point is, what you could do as agents is just help your clients stay on track. And what I mean is, have you called your mortgage broker? Have you decided? It's a good, what I sometimes do when I get to hold of my clients to say, okay, your closing's at the end of April. Try to make sure that you've signed off on whatever your mortgage lender is by mid-April. That gives them a full week to generate the instructions and everything can be organized. Don't leave it later than that. Because I have people who are, I'm too busy, I'm going out of town on a business trip. Yeah, they were asking me for these forms, I haven't got around to it. It helps us, it helps you, and it helps the client if we can get an organized deal put together. Stay on top of reminding them about that. That's all. It's a simple little, have you reached out to so-and-so at the bank? Have you made any decisions? When, double checking to make sure you're moving on this, because you should probably have this resolved by such and such a date. If you need my assistance, let me know. Okay? And again, also remind them to try and make appointments. Mortgage brokers and the bankers that they have these days are not very efficient. A lot of the mortgage brokers are, the bankers aren't. Those young people that come in, they don't understand the timing. So the closing's Friday, and then they're busy scheduling an appointment to meet with the customers to sign the papers on a Wednesday or Thursday of the week. And I try and tell them there's not enough time.
Always do that.
Like, they don't get it. They don't care, or they don't get it. So the clients have to be the ones, and it's too late by that point. And it isn't my job. I can't handhold every file and call them, have you done this? Have you made your appointment? I haven't received your mortgage instructions. Did you call? There has to be some autonomy and independence, but at the same time, I put it in the letter, but they should be aware that they should try and move it along faster. Yeah.
How many days in advance will a bank send you the money?
They never send it in advance. I get it the day
Okay,
of.
okay.
What's your favorite day to close? Tuesday, Wednesday, besides holidays?
Oh,
It's a pick.
Not
Wednesday,
Friday.
Not a Friday, not a Friday.
Never a
Any
Friday.
day but Friday.
Never a Friday.
I know, but like
Monday,
Tuesday after.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Don't
Okay.
care.
Just curious.
I'm not the,
Sometimes when
I
you're
don't
picking, it's like,
discriminate.
what day, Tuesday?
Try to avoid the end of the month, regardless of the day, or the first of the month. There's always a lineup of busy. It doesn't help your customers either when they have to book movers, because everybody's booking, so try and stagger, odd dates so that they have more selection. Condos are notorious. Oh, elevators are booked, sorry, you can't have it. Or, we can give you the elevators from 9 to 12. Well, what good is that gonna do? I can't close your deal that fast, so it's irrelevant. So we try and pick days that benefit everybody.
Right.
All right, what else can I tell you? Insurance. The issue with insurance that I'm encountering is a lack of understanding of what kind of a policy we're looking for. Now, we need insurance to close the deal because we have to provide legal comfort to the lender that their interest in the property is protected. Meaning, they buy a house, it burns down, what happens? The insurance money can either be used to pay off the mortgage or to rebuild the house. Now, When it comes to insurance, there's only two ways you can do it. One is a statement that's included called guaranteed replacement cost. That is a clause that you pay for in your insurance, which means whatever the cost of rebuilding your home to its existing condition, they will pay it. The other is to put a fixed cost. Now, when they do that, the lenders don't like it unless it matches the mortgage. So for people that are getting a home line and have a value, okay, I really need a $500,000 mortgage, but I'm going to get an $800,000 $300,000 line attached, so it's $800,000. They're going to end up with an insurance letter that says property rebuild cost $500,000, but that doesn't cover the mortgage. And I go through the arguments with the customers all the time. They say, yes, but. I go, I get it. Either you increase it to $800,000 or go get guaranteed replacement cost. If you get guaranteed replacement cost, it doesn't matter. But I don't know if you can get guaranteed replacement costs when you are renovating a home. Like if you're buying it to renovate, they may not do it. So there are some tricky parts to it. Because it's tricky, if it's not a standard situation, encourage your client to start the insurance process sooner rather than later. They may have to shop around to get what they need. Okay? We need it, we cannot close without it. What we ask for is a document called a binder letter. That's an insurance term for proof of insurance. It's usually a one-page document, sets out the names of the owners, the address, the amount, or guaranteed replacement cost, and we go from there. But I can't close without it. And people have neglected and run around in the last minute, meeting them to sign, and then as soon as we're done, we're on the phone with the insurance. They won't give it to me. Yeah.
Do you put that in your letter?
Good question. Let me see if I have the insurance in there.
Got it. You got
That's
it.
the sale.
So, sorry, I got a
Yep.
little confused there with the numbers. So, say my
Yes,
house
I did.
my house is worth $700,000 and my mortgage on it was only $300,000. And I go buy insurance on it. Would I be then looking at the guaranteed replacement?
You would always want guaranteed replacement costs because it will guarantee that whatever the costs are, they will pay to rebuild your home.
And then you assign it, like I say, my house is worth $700,000.
You won't assign it, they will figure it out
Okay.
based
No,
on
but it still
construction costs.
includes the land.
That's right, there's a land value. My point is, and that's a different example, if, let's say your house cost to rebuild is $400,000, but, or at least you think it is, and you get $400,000 replacement cost value, and then calamity occurs, and it turns out it's $500,000, you're on the hook for $100 because they'll only pay $400. Now, they don't care about land value. That's $400 replacement value. That's what you paid for. That's your policy.
And how would they establish that?
They have some general charts,
footage,
square footage,
finishes.
cost, yeah.
Okay.
So you'd have to tell them what kind of house you have,
And
level.
appliances and stuff,
And if you have a semi-detached,
same thing.
chances are you're gonna burn down your neighbor too.
Well,
They have liability.
that's a
Yeah, but-
liability. That's not a
okay,
rebuild.
okay.
Your rebuild is for your own property, liabilities for your neighbor
Gotcha.
suing you that you
Yeah.
left your stove on or whatever. So that's why I'm saying, from a regular point of view, your choice is get guaranteed replacement costs, just get it. If you can't qualify for it, because it may be a rental or, I'm not 100% sure about rental, but if you're rebuilding, then you have to up it to equal the mortgage. I had one client say, no way, I'm gonna get rid of the home line, I'm just gonna stick with the mortgage, and he reduced the insurance back down to the cost of the mortgage, and he was happy with that. Because he said, I didn't need the home line. The bank was telling me to get it, it's free, just to get it.
Oh.
And he said, well, I don't want to spend more on my insurance, I don't really plan on using it, so the hell with it, I don't reduce it back. And they changed it, amended the instructions, and then we reduced the insurance. You can do that. So just keep in mind, insurance is just potentially, not usually, but can be a problem, and people do leave it to the last minute. So that movers we talked about, busy periods are hard, make sure they book ahead of time. Utilities. What I wanted to briefly talk about here on utilities, I advise my clients, I have a list here when I purchase, and basically, so I will talk about how we manage everything, and then I give a list at the back of the various utility companies, depending on where you're located, to contact. Now, I have not myself used this service. I'm going to show you a website I was approached. There is a company called MoveSnap. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
I know nothing about them. I'm not interested because they're too expensive. But depending on the person and the cost, it provides a service online so you can pass along to your clients that they can, in a sense, do their own registrations, everything's seamless, you know, the whole millennial thing move online. I'll show you a demo from that they gave me here. I don't, as I said, I looked into it. If it was on a per file basis, maybe, but it's not really something that interests me, but I'm gonna just see if I can pull it up here. this one here.
MoveSnap is the quickest and easiest way to get all your moving-related tasks done. It brings together everything you need for your move in one single place, so you can save time and stay organized. Your MoveSnap dashboard is personalized for your specific move. It tracks your progress so you'll always know what to do next. With everything at your fingertips, moving tasks that used to be tedious get done in minutes. Want to see how? Let's say you need to transfer your electricity provider today. Simply click Move Your Utilities and select Electricity. 2 clicks are all it takes, and your transaction will be completed securely directly with your provider, so you never have to worry about sharing private information. How about notifying businesses of your new address? The average household has to notify 15 to 20 different businesses of their move. That's painful. With MoveSnap, you can change your addresses with hundreds of businesses, order new government ID cards, and make sure you never miss anything important. MoveSnap packs a lot more. From finding local charities to pick up unwanted stuff, to preparing your new home, MoveSnap is your one-stop shop, making your upcoming move your simplest one yet. Ready to get started?
Anyways, I'm not endorsing them. I'm simply saying that there are these things out there that, you know, you may feel gives a value added to your clients. And the way I understand it works is you pay an annual subscription amount. I think it was around $1,200 or something.
Whoa.
And then when you want, you send a personal invitation to your client, and then they can log into that, what do you call it, the page where, portal or, and do whatever they need to do. But it's a value added that may say, look, we make your life simple. Now, some agents are starting to use it, so you may not now want to do it, but you may get questions later on. Oh, I was just talking about this to this agent and they offered me MoveSnap, do you? No, there may be other things out there, I don't know. But in the scheme of things, you have to evaluate if it's worth it. For me, it's not, but there are things out there. They don't necessarily affect too much, but from my point of view, I just make sure the clients are aware both on a sale and purchase. You gotta talk to the utility companies, order final meter readings, and carry on from there. So regardless, that's something that they will have to consider. When we're talking about, any other questions so far, by the way? No? Okay. Keys. Now, this is just from my point of view, when dealing with keys, both on sales and purchases. On sales, I typically would like to send out my closing package, which is all the signed documents and a set of keys, the day before to the other lawyer to hold in escrow. It just makes things go faster rather than waiting till the day of. However, sometimes it becomes problematic because you need to retain keys to do last-minute inspections. So if you have the option, try to see if you could schedule an inspection, if possible, the day before. That way, if we get the keys early, we can send it out. Or if there's an extra set of keys, you can tell the clients, just all I need is one key. I don't care how many others are out there, I just need one key to send. Otherwise, if we get it noon on the day of closing, I have to hold the package, wait, and then courier it out. It just slows things down.
But essentially, they shouldn't expect keys before 5 PM on the day of closing. Like that's
Legally,
Yeah,
we
what
have
is
up
the
till
time?
6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is, I always thought is odd, because it's the old way of doing business, but right now, the registry office, the land titles, everything closes at 5.
Yeah.
So practically speaking, I treat it as 5, but you have somebody who wants to make a fuss that could be 6. But, you know, technically you're right. You don't want to wait because everybody's on hold. You have anxious buyers sitting there going, I need my keys, my movers, and you want to get it done. And vice versa, especially if it's a Friday, they want their money, they want their move, everything. So the sooner we can get the keys, the better. Again, also another option, keys are what? To copy a keys, unless it's a Medco key, it's like $1 something. Just get an extra key and then everybody knows there's an extra key for the agent, there's an extra key you can give to the lawyer, and the rest they can do whatever they want. That's my recommend. You don't have to do it yourself, just tell your client, order an extra key, or make 2 sets, one so you can give to the lawyer after. Because that way I always have the couple coming in, do you have an extra key? I need this, we need to go back and do some cleaning, and you get into that whole thing. Just a simple thing like that.
What about the final walkthrough, if they want to walk through?
I hate final walkthroughs. It's an invitation to complain.
Yeah, I know, but,
Yeah.
you know, the buyers want it, and the buyers lawyer tells them to walk through.
Well, If they have an extra key, I don't care.
Yeah, but, well, sometimes the people are still moving out that day anyway, so they're still there.
Well, it also depends, first of all, legally, they don't have a right to a final walkthrough unless it's in the agreement.
Yeah, but can't they walk through on the insurance,
No.
the insurance,
Normally ask for 2 or 3.
if you go there, it could burn down that day.
Depends.
No, it doesn't work. If
That's what we
you,
used to tell, that's what we used to
Ask for
say, was
2
that you go
appointments.
through on the insurance, line on the offer. Walk through.
I don't personally buy that as a legitimate reason. I think that you just want to spell it out as much as you want in your offer. So if you are planning a final walkthrough, then you have to say that the seller will grant the buyer X number of visits. But again, you start getting into language on mutual agreement, or is it just arbitrary? Because if the seller says, look, I'm moving, I don't have time for this, the answer is no, what are you going to do? Complain to the lawyer, what do you want me to do? I can't force them to let you in. All I can do is send a letter saying, if we find a problem, we'll hold you responsible. So,
You can say with 24 hours notice.
Yeah, but they can still say no.
No, but if the
if
agreement says
you
that
ask your,
if
if
you're
you
given.
feel, well, if you're adamant that you want, then you put it in saying, the buyer will be entitled to 3 visits, the third of which shall be scheduled for noon on the closing day. Then that's absolute. There's no,
Yeah.
that's all. They can't say
Or
no.
you could say that X number of visits provided a 24-hour notice is given.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But again, if they refuse arbitrarily, all I can do is object and put the lawyer on notice if we find a problem. By the way, when you're doing these, try to temper their expectations.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's a hole in the wall. Yeah, that's where a painting used to hang. That's the way it goes. Reasonable wear and tear.
Yeah.
Oh, there's scratches on the floor. Yeah, that happens.
There's no-
Wasn't there before. These are the things, you're not going to always get a pristine, perfect turnaround. There's going to be issues. So the more you sort of pre-warn them, the better your life will be. Let's see here, I think. All right, so those are the main points I wanted to get through. I want to just get back into the relationships. So in terms of how I handle my clients, the first thing I do, whether it's a purchase or sale, is I send them a welcome letter. The welcome letter will set out who I am, my staff contact information, and some basic information about the transaction. So for example, outside of the first page, which is just that, I now have a full detailed letter. And I do make it clear, again, how much they read. In order to ensure your purchase closes with ease, please read carefully. Somebody said, you didn't tell me that. I go, actually, we did. If you would read, it says in here, and I even put in here, in bold, if you're obtaining a mortgage, we will need instructions from your lender as early as possible. We require the documents at least 10 days prior to scheduled closing date. So there are things that are spelled out. Things that also they have to understand is they need to meet with me in person and they need to make themselves available. Yeah.
Last week, there was a thing on the news that this insurance company had in the fine print, whoever.
The contest?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw
Was
that.
it $10,000?
I think so.
Yeah, and she was the only one after a couple of years
Uh-huh.
that read it and she won.
Well,
They
it's like
gave her-
those exams that kids get that say, read
Yeah,
through this
yeah, and
first.
they gave her
the last
extra, they
questions
gave her
and
extra
don't
money
do
for a
it.
charity and everything.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. No plans to do
No
that.
contest.
The thing is that I think I have to try and explain, I hope that, people have to understand, and that's also right from the beginning. This is the most expensive transaction they're ever going to do in their life unless they buy another property. So they need to keep it in perspective. When they're looking at hiring people, they're going to interview you to represent their needs. They need to know that you have the appropriate skill to either help them figure out what to buy or how to market to sell. That's all part of the process. But the same thing goes for mortgage brokers, lawyers, insurance, movers, etc. Utilities you can't do anything about. But what I hope agents do, because it's not so much just, here's a bunch of names, go pick who you want, or if you want, go try and have them understand that you want to work with a lawyer. I have no problem losing a deal to another lawyer for a real estate transaction. Where I have a problem is when they pick somebody just solely based on price who may or may not be a full real estate lawyer, but does it and also does other stuff on the side. I've had to try and close deals. The lawyer's in court. I got to wait. We had our money first thing in the morning. Everything was so ready to go, and I didn't close my deal till 3:30 in the afternoon because I had to wait for the lawyer to show up. Why? They're in court. I would say about 95% of what I do is real estate, and unfortunately these days that's a bad thing. But I'm hoping things improve a little bit. the reality is I want to make sure that people pick lawyers who know what they're doing, and that includes not just knowledge, but how they really understand the industry. We work together. I work with other lawyers all the time to try and get deals done. We're not sitting here trying to blow up deals. We're trying to solve a problem. They come up, oh, there's a problem with title. Okay, how about we try this? Do you think that would be work? And we can go back and forth and work it out. It's not one of these, I am not closing unless you get this registered. That's it. And then you get into these fights. You have the lawyer types too who like to be heroes. They find something innocuous and blow it up to make a big deal out of it, and everybody's scrambling. Nope, don't do that. I'm trying to save you. The reality is when you're talking to your customers, obviously they have freedom of choice, and you have to follow the rules and provide them a number of names. But in trying to get them to interview the lawyer, don't just call them. The first question I always get, well, how much do you charge? That's the first question. Not, how many years experience do you have? Do you work primarily in real estate? What's your focus? How do you propose to handle me if I'm a first-time buyer? That kind of thing. Do I meet with you? Do I meet with your law clerk? These are genuine questions I'm happy to answer, and I usually do. When people express an interest, I'll walk them through the whole transaction, even if I don't get the deal. I remember once somebody called me and I was away on vacation at the date of closing, but I still explained the whole deal to them, gave them a quote, say this is what you should look for, and make sure you get good coverage. So when you're recommending people, I know there's a responsibility on you. You don't want to recommend somebody and then get flack from your client. You recommended me to so-and-so, it was a terrible experience. It can happen. But you want to know, look at the track record, look at the person, make sure they have the most experience available and that they'll be taken care of. That's really the bottom line in protecting your clients and your interests. Yeah.
James, when you are doing a deal, do you have your clerk do most of it, or are you there? Because I've had clients complain to me before when I've referred them. They're like, oh, the lawyer was away and I had to deal with their law clerk. And I'm like, well, was it that horrible? I'm like,
well, I could make one joke and say the law clerk typically knows more than the
Yeah.
lawyer.
I was just like, how bad of an experience? I
Okay.
mean, they do have a life. So.
Let me put it in perspective for you. In terms of how I run my practice, and I think most lawyers would, the law clerk does the legwork. So they will do the intake. They will do the document preparation. They will communicate with the client day to day on any issues relating to the mortgage, final number calculation, setting up the appointment. Beyond that, where I get involved, unless there is a title issue or a problem, is I meet with the clients every single time. My clerks do not. They're afraid of people. They don't want to.
They do all the grunt work. You
They
do
do
all
the,
people
well,
work.
you call it grunt work?
Well,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
behind
they
the
do,
scenes.
they do the legwork and are familiar with the file from top to bottom. That's why I joked earlier that if they actually had the confidence to go into a meeting, they could do it because they know the ins and outs. I do every single meeting, 100% all the time. If I'm not here and there's a reason, whether it's a medical or otherwise, then I get another lawyer to cover for me. I know there are some lawyers who allow law clerks to do sign-ups. I don't. There's nothing illegal about it, just so you know. But from a practical point of view, I like to do my own signups. And I have limitations. When things are busy, I take on files to a maximum that I know I can handle. I'm not going to let things slide. But I do every single meeting myself. Now, if a client says that's not good enough, I don't want to hear from the law clerk. I want to hear every step from you. Then they're going to have to pay extra because, in the scheme of things, if I have to take time to sit there and call them for, okay, we got your mortgage instructions, this one, okay, we'll be ready to book your appointment, okay, this is the numbers, let me explain this to you, and everything, that's fine, but there's a cost to that.
Yeah, I don't know what that issue was about, but I was just curious.
Well, maybe they didn't meet with the lawyer.
I don't know either. I can't remember. I just remember them complaining.
Who does the electronic registration, you or the law clerk, or?
The lawyer.
So you,
The lawyers have to,
okay,
by law.
well, some don't.
But practically
They get in
speaking,
trouble.
yeah, well, we are being recorded, so yes, lawyers by law are required to maintain their password and to register documents personally. There's no ifs, buts, or ands about it. There's a section that allows the law clerks to generate draft documents, but that's the limit. So that is the expectation. So that is why I mentioned earlier, when I had a lawyer who was in court, they weren't available in the office. Now, you don't have to be in the office. You need a laptop. You can do it remotely. But if they're busy or in a meeting,
Yeah.
I have to wait. There's nothing I can do. Okay?
In terms of documents that you need from real estate agents, because I always put a whole thing at the lawyer.
I know.
You actually don't need working with a realtor, you probably don't need the identification. You need the APS, you need listing agreements, you need any amendments,
Waivers, all waivers.
you need
Waivers.
waivers, and you need
Deposit receipt.
deposit receipts.
No.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, I'll throw it in the file, that's fine.
Okay, so you don't need the extra deposit checks and the receipts? No.
No, because I'm gonna get a commission statement anyways confirming,
Okay,
you know,
all
what
right,
the balance is, and then I confirm with the client when I sit down, is this correct? Is there,
right.
if there's a problem. One thing I can give you as a minor tip, I would say, not me, I'm trying to think how many percentage. A large chunk of my clients are always surprised when I meet them to sign their sale papers that agents charge HST on commission.
Yeah, you charge HST on your fee.
Yeah, except my fee is a lot less, and the impact of the HST is a lot more tolerable. So my point is, we all make assumptions that everybody understands HST is on everything,
Yeah.
but there are a few select people who say, oh, it's 5%, okay, it's 25,000, I've got it in my budget. Next thing you know, there's another, I don't know, 3,000 or something that they didn't budget for. So always make it clear when they're signing the listing, because on the purchase we don't care about signing the listing with you. You are aware this is the commission and there is HST, so make sure you calculate that. Okay? Basically, I think, I'm trying to think what else. We have to set expectations collectively for our relationship with our client. So we may have meetings, we want to try and surpass expectations and follow it with communication. And that's what we all have to do. That's why I feel in the long run, it's better for us to all communicate rather than just work in different segments. Yeah.
What's the craziest thing the mortgage companies have asked for that you've come across? Have you had where they want to see the home inspector and all that stuff?
Once, yeah.
Sometimes they ask crazy stuff. And that's why I tell people too, when they're getting their mortgage from an oddball company, the lawyer may charge you more because they gotta do a lot more jumping through hoops. That's why I understand when you say the last day, the instructions, sometimes.
I really wish,
ages
it is a frustrating experience
instructions.
because, you know, people are spending a significant amount of money buying properties, but they don't really understand what we do at the end
Yeah.
and where we're at in terms of the transaction. And, you know, to be put in a situation where we have to drop something, do rush emergency, do extra work, and we're not billing for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just,
It's not fair.
then the other one too, which I also have issues with, which is the practical versus reality. I'm not here to guarantee a person's deal, so if they close the deal, everything's smooth, and then the fridge isn't working, why is it my job for free
Yeah,
to
to
sit
write
there and
letters.
write letters
Yeah.
to say, well, you know, the fridge isn't working, and inevitably, there are some agents who have that, share that view and say, just deal with the lawyer, and they just go like this, and
Yeah.
they throw me under the bus.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing it to a point,
Yeah.
but there's an expectation
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
unrealistic.
yeah.
So, what I think I like to try and do with my agents is work together. There's no reason why we can't. And it's all about communication and really guiding, like a conveyor belt where we're sort of guiding the client from the beginning to the end of the process. And if you take that step as the lead, then it reflects on you at the end with better reviews and possibly more referrals, I think, rather than just, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because I have had clients complain, my agent's done, they're on their next deal, I can't talk to them. They said, you deal, write this, can you find out when I can do my final inspection and whatever, and you get that whole thing, so.
How do you
Okay.
handle, oh, sorry,
Sorry,
there you
no,
go.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
When agents are purchasing their own home, the commissions, like, does it just go on the, how does that all get?
Usually I get the agent to sort it out with their
Yeah.
brokerage,
Oh, okay.
and then
Does
they'll
it involve a
just.
lawyer on, okay.
Well, no,
so
it involves a lawyer only to the extent that I will say, I
I'll
need
know what's
an
happening.
updated or revised
okay,
commission
okay.
statement showing that it's not, that it's been
Okay.
reduced
Yeah.
to say 2.5%, so everything else is waived or whatever. But again, my job is to verify with the client. We do go ahead, walk them through all the documents, all the numbers ahead of time. We try to avoid any surprises. But, yeah.
Do you work with agents that, say, will pay their legals, the agent, their client legals?
I haven't.
Oh.
Not, I can't say that I
My
have.
agent paid for
Okay.
mine, they went and bought my house.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Would you would,
I shouldn't say that. I did it once or twice.
My
Yeah.
agent
I don't
paid
like
for
it
my
because
legal.
what ends
I
up
was gonna
happening
say,
is I have
is
to
it a
chase the agent
conflict?
after the
Yeah.
closing
Yeah.
to get paid.
Oh.
So
That's
basically,
exactly
said,
what
would you
I
mind
did.
doing it? I
Fees.
promised that I would cover their
That's what
fees.
happened to
Yeah.
my
Don't
legal.
bill them anything. I
Oh.
said, why can't I just bill them and then you reimburse them?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
no. I don't want them to pay anything. So then I
Okay.
absorb, and I'm sitting on disbursements,
Yeah, yeah.
out of
Right.
pocket,
It's not fair to
and then I
yourself.
have to harass the agent.
Yeah.
Can you just,
Yeah.
hello, I'm over here. Can you just
Okay.
send me my money? And I don't love it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can do it from
Yeah.
time to time. I don't want to make a career.
okay, so what's the fee for a purchase?
It's on his.
Okay.
Read David.
When you're dealing with POA,
You and Mr. Kuchowski are partners, yeah?
Yes. He does the Kachowski, sometimes I've been called Lax Kachowski as a name.
Yes,
My first name is Lax, and
His
my last
name
name
is
is Kachowski. I get mail like that too, and I'm like, no. He does essentially litigation, and I actually want to bring him in here. I got to talk to Irene because he can be, when he has some time, he's busy, but to do, protecting yourself from litigation. Steps that you can take to ensure that nothing blows back on you or
That would
protecting
be
your
a
client.
great.
I mean, you've got insurance and everything, but
Yeah.
who wants to
You
go
don't
that
want- you
far?
don't want-
No,
Nobody needs to
No,
go
no,
there.
no, you
So
don't want to have
this
to
is,
go
you
through
know,
the
and
hassle.
he also did, and won a lawsuit on a leaky basement case.
Oh.
So there are some things that, you know, he can address with you on those kind of issues. And he can help clients. I mean, you know, most of the time he'll do easily the small claims. And you know small claims is 25,000.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier, and there are ways you can help clients by they can do some of it on their own. So he could prepare a claim, they could run with it, he can jump in, jump out, there's no real issue. Anything over, it's gotta be with a lawyer. And that's where your costs go up, but, so that's what he does.
I just have one. Is there anything anything we need to know about selling a home the power of attorney selling the home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a big thing, but I just don't.
That's also
So you
a
get the
red
copy
flag
of the
for fraud. There's a
POA?
red flag for fraud. If you really want to protect yourself,
How do you?
number one, you want to, at the beginning stage, ask for the ID,
copy. Got
the
that.
copy of the ID
Meet
from the
everybody.
person who is.
So would I have to meet the gentleman who's in the home?
I would.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I have asked him, okay,
That would be the prudent approach, and make notes on it.
okay.
I mean, you don't have to sit there with a selfie.
Yeah,
You
That
know, in
one's
there.
right
Well, it depends on how.
Which is a bit of a strange, yeah. I'm
Power of
just-
attorney
I feel
is
like
the
I'm
number
getting caught
one.
up in something.
It's
and I'm
number
like,
one for fraud, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody will flag it otherwise.
Yeah.
So you have to
Yeah.
make a reasonable attempt to validate the power of attorney. Now, if that person is incapable mentally, then you need to get a doctor's note.
Okay.
A letter of opinion from the physician saying that I've examined so-and-so and they are not capable of managing their affairs, and and then there's a valid power of attorney for it, great. Okay? As long as, again, you make sure it's a real doctor, not Dr. Smith.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Dr. Seuss.
Well,
Or Dr. Seuss, yes.
I don't know,
From
like,
Whoville.
yeah.
But they're all, be careful with those, because I'm not saying they're not legit,
Yeah.
but the one time you let your guard down is when something bad could happen. And it turns out it's a fraud. And anyone can prepare a power of attorney.
Yeah.
You know, with all the information on the internet now, it's pretty easy to figure out who owns what house, have a signed power of attorney, get yourself fake ID if you even need to, right?
Good point,
I mean, you wouldn't even need fake ID, you just give yourself a power of attorney.
yeah. Right.
So, again, that's why things are flagged with title insurance, things like that. So, does anybody feel like their attitude has changed in terms of how they want to approach their clients, or is that how you already did it before? I'm just curious.
I'm very happy I'm here today.
Yeah. Thanks for
I
coming.
know what
I'm
Jay
an
always
absolute
does.
beginner,
Yeah,
so
I was always
somebody-
very in touch with my
My
lawyers
opinion
and
is
always very
probably-
proactive with my
Yeah.
clients and contacted them throughout and always communicated, because this is where stuff falls through the cracks after
Oh,
you sold the house, so you can't disappear. Otherwise, there is no relationship really.
Well, that's it, and these days, it's all about relationship
Right.
building and maintenance.
Yeah.
That's how you grow, like your little pyramid of clients all the way up. So, unless there's any other questions, I'm available if you have any specific issues.
I have an
Otherwise-
unrelated question.
And I have to go
And I'm
for it.
dying to know the answer to this. What's the difference between barrister, solicitor, and lawyer?
Okay, you have to go back actually to the British concept.
Yeah.
Barristers, in England, to become a lawyer, you have to choose one stream or the other. You can either be a barrister or a solicitor,
Okay.
not both. A barrister is someone who is authorized to go to court, i.e. a litigator with the wig and all of that. The solicitor is the paper pusher like me. So you typically would have offices in England, barristers and solicitors, because they're complementary services. Here, a lawyer can be both at the same time. So when I graduate, I am a barrister, I could go to court and do court work, and I'm a solicitor, so.
Do you have robes?
No.
Yeah, well, no.
You can't go to work then.
No, I borrow.
Yeah, but wait,
We don't need wigs here.
No, there's an article in the paper 2 days ago about the
They're
robe.
they're trying, but you wanna know the real
barristers and
concept? I think they
solicitors
missed out
are
on the whole
It's
concept.
not gonna go.
You wanna know why lawyers wear robes?
I know mine.
Cover their clothes.
No, so everybody's the same.
Everyone looks the same.
Okay,
Rich or
you
poor,
wanted
everybody's the
to
same.
make sure there was no
Yes.
bias in the courtroom. So if you're charged or suing, that you hire the top lawyer who comes in their Harry Rose,
Yeah, that's
top of the
right.
line suits, professional, gold, everything, versus the guy who comes in
Who's just
with,
graduated.
you know, with everything
With the
else,
track pants.
you know, or virtually, you know, some variation on it. So they came up with the concept of robes.
Yeah.
Robes hide who your background is, so everybody's treated equally,
Yeah.
even though in
That's
theory you
That's
don't
right.
necessarily come
Yeah.
across. Is somebody with long hair and a scruffy
Or
beard
fucking
any less of a
blonde hair,
lawyer?
Blonde locks.
You know, but that's the
It's the
concept.
same as the school uniform idea, I guess.
Yes, but there's always a way
They
to
buy the shoes,
personalize them.
good shoes, right?
Okay, I
Shoes in the
personally,
backpack.
I personally am still in favor of robes, even though I don't own a pair.
They're
I remember
expensive.
borrowing,
They're
I think I borrowed my roommate's,
They're like
and he was over
$1,000.
6'4", so I was dragging him.
Oh,
back,
yeah.
you know.
My friend bought
Like
it.
3,000.
We gave her money when she
That's
said.
it.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see the article, it was in January, about the guy committed fraud by putting stuff in the family trust, but he used the wrong font.
Yes,
Oh.
yes. He used a
Nice.
font that didn't exist at
That
the
was very
time.
away.
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
He
So it's
used a
really-
font that did not come into legal existence
At the
until a
time.
later date, so
He-
they would
he backed
determine that
into
the
it.
That's
document.
pretty crafty that
Yeah.
they figured
Wow.
out the font.
Yeah.
Was it really very different? Was it
Comic
noticeable?
Sans.
No.
Yeah,
I guess when they want to scrutinize the
Yeah.
document, that's
I
it.
guess.
Um,
That's pretty
Huh.
good.
Now, let me just ask you a couple of quick questions, because we're off topic now on this. How are you finding the market now? Is it listings picking up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
The
of
weather's
Monday,
better.
coming out.
as of
Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah,
I
I
after
feel
the
like things
holidays.
now that March breaks over, it'll.
Yeah.
That's
and the
what,
weather.
March break and weather.
The weather was the worst this
The
year,
private schools are saying.
and
Yeah.
the Toronto cleaning the snow is the worst ever. They didn't clean the snow.
Yeah,
Especially on the,
pretty
Young
yeah.
Street, right here, they never took away the
Yeah.
ice.
Well,
No.
you get so much ice buildup that there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
these
like a
are-
machine to
Yeah, they
chop
do
the shit
clean
out of
the
Yeah,
them.
walls,
Like,
it's so dangerous.
But
So,
the
okay,
I
market's
complained to
so
my daughter's
But yes,
school, they
market
haven't put
is-
it up.
the market
Yeah,
is coming
market's-
around.
No,
It's
problem.
waking up.
Market's good.
I just don't want to have like one of those, that groundhog where you have 6 more weeks of
Oh,
winter.
yeah. Well, today's first day of spring, everybody.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
that's
for
right.
example, when I look at the central, the C district of Toronto, every day there'd be maybe like 18 new listings, 18, Monday was like 65.
Okay, so there is a thought.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to hear.
There's, in reality, it's still a shortage of supply.
Now, how are we gonna shake
No.
that? How do you get people to list? Like, what is it gonna take? What do you think it's gonna take?
See,
The
part
price
of the problem was, what started all this backup was the Toronto on transfer tax. Because the normal situation is, you know, they start with a condo, they move up to a house, that guy from a house moves up to a bigger house. But that guy in the house here, in order to move up, by the time he pays our fee and the HST, land transfer tax, he spent $50,000. I tell them, you know what, you like the house, you need a little bit bigger, you want to stay in the area, put an addition on.
Yeah, additions are big.
Well, the other
Everyone's
option
doing
that
that
can
now.
solve the whole problem is just reducing real estate commission.
Yeah, but that doesn't fix the Toronto land transfer tax.
That's been around a long time already to filter through. I'm just
Yeah, but it
wondering,
hasn't filtered through.
you know, I will tell you, you're right though. I spoke to a broker, mortgage broker yesterday, and I asked him, he says, I've already booked more mortgages than I did all of last year. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, all construction mortgages.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's just
Yeah, renovate.
renovating their own
Yeah.
home and staying put.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah,
problem.
and now they're gonna build the lane housing as
Yeah.
well.
And I'm not a favor of that.
No, neither am
I
I.
don't know about that, but anyways, I'm going to end our session with, I don't know how many of you ever watched this show, New Amsterdam? Does anybody ever?
No.
see
I
it?
have,
No?
I watch Street Legal.
New Amsterdam is a medical show, and this new medical director comes on, and his tagline, which I like, is always walking around to everybody in every department, how can I help? So I'm going to leave you with that thought, how can I help? When you
Thank you.
have an issue, a question, a second opinion, just feel free to reach out to me. Doesn't matter if they already have a lawyer, I'm happy to.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.